everybody. Welcome to another episode of the James Loud Podcast. And today our special guest is Kristian from Kounter Kulture and Conception. How are you doing today?
Great, James. Good to be here.
Dude, I'm glad you're here. We've done this before on the James Loud show back in the day, and we've known each other for quite a while.
Yeah.
We met through Jay before he passed over at Finest.
Yeah.
You guys were doing big things.
Yeah. This was a fun time with him.
Incredible person. He was a valuable contribution to the industry and just loved the plant, loved weed. He was amazing. And he would be in disbelief on some of the things in the industry and other things he'd be excited about. So
Yeah.
But yeah, and then you grew out some genetics of mine back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day. 7/8 sour. I remember growing that for a while. We had a lot of, in the 215, we had a lot of sour heads, and not everyone wanted to wait for, 10, 12 week strain. And
Yeah.
7/8 sour had the sour smell. It had the structure and stuff, and did really well with that for a while.
It had that nose burn. You just don't get stuff like that anymore. People don't. Well, I think for a while, people didn't appreciate the sour, and then all of a sudden, people just want a purple.
I think weed is starting to become like a fashion. It's starting to become cyclical.
Yeah.
And to see, a lot of old stuff kind of coming back, like a lot of the new generation, whether just, smokers or people in the industry haven't seen a lot of the stuff that we grew in the past and got to like. And it's fun for that in the industry, being on the genetic side, like seeing some of the stuff come back.
Totally. It's funny. Yeah, it's almost nostalgic. Some of these smells that I've been smelled for 20 years and I smell it, it's like unmistakable that it has this in it, whether it's the real thing or it's a derivative of it. Yeah. It's great. You were talking about Urkel earlier, smelling something with Urkel in it. And it's like, I love that, where it's like, you smell it, you're like, fuck, that's got Urkel in it, or it is Urkel. I've seen both. Urkel's been going around again as well. Yeah, that's one of those ones that'll never completely go away, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you hit the nail on the head. It's nostalgic. Like for me, like when I've smelt some of these, like, you brought me a super silver haze a couple weeks ago, and I was like, like it kind of triggers a memory or an emotion,
Mm-hmm.
for me a lot of times, and like it'll put me back into a place, and it's special. It's bringing on the breeding side, like with the Urkel, like I've smelled things and I was like, ooh, I want to try to pull that back out deep, funk. And like purples nowadays, like you look at the color, but like purples like had a smell too,
Right.
12, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, before GDP was Urkel, and it had that very floral, what you think of purple weed smelling like, that's it. It's in there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a good one. Didn't yield the best.
No.
Still doesn't. But yeah, I mean, for as far as expression, it's amazing. I like GDP too. GDP is another one. I don't like growing GDP. I've complained about it on this show many times about how long it takes to veg. But the flower smoking GDP, I like the taste. I think it's great.
Heavy hitter.
It's got that floral like overtone almost, and then it's complex.
Yeah. It's
interesting how it's changed over the years with genetics, where there was a point where you couldn't even sell purple to save your life. And then it went green, and and then cookies kind of brought the purple back in, the color back into it, and then it evolved with gelato again, and then they said, let's get rid of all the green stuff.
I remember some of the first, I think we've talked about this in the past, but like some of the first breeding books I read, like, that was a recessive trait. Wanted to actually select and get that out of there,
right?
And it's funny to see because, in the old days, I think the purples, probably weren't as strong, and, nowadays, like we, definitely the evolution, people have, got it stronger and, frostier and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, when I first started doing selections and breeding, like, it was a recessive trait. You wanted to yank that out of there.
Yeah, it's funny how it's so subjective, and flavor is so subjective, and color is so subjective to the individual, and it's funny how there's actually weight put on the color of it when it's something that's supposed to be. You're looking for a flavor and an effect, but people eat with their eyes.
Yeah,
and whether it's food or whatever. But it's interesting because my friend just passed recently, and there's a couple of things I've been reflecting on. His memorial service was last Saturday. And his son and daughter basically made me the steward of his seed collection. and I was going through the seed collection. I found seeds I gave him 10 years ago. So the value of seeds are in their use and not in their possession.
Sure.
And I'm sure there's tons of people I've given seeds to that haven't germinated, and so many people have given me seeds that I haven't germinated. And it's really a trip with that. But he was so heavily focused on flavor over the last month since he passed on 420. I've been, reflecting on the importance of effect. I've been focused on flavor, heavily focused on flavor. As a chef, I'm all like flavor, flavor, flavor. And so effect has kind of gotten sidelined a little bit. I mean, of course, I want to feel good when I take it, and I talk about effect, but I think it should be prioritized to a certain degree. This whitethorn rose that's popular now, and if you have a chance to get it, it's an amazing thing to try. It has an amazing effect. Even beyond the fact that it's purple rosin and purple flower. I mean, that's cool. Mm-hmm. But the effect is it's feel-good weed. At the end of the day, it makes you feel great. You smoke it, and you're like, wow, I feel good. I could take on the world. It's not going to have that narcotic effect that some people are looking for. It's not going to have that crazy sativa effect, but it has this calming almost, but like makes me feel really good.
Yeah.
Enough on my rant. What do you breed for?
A lot of terpenes. The effect as well too. Like, I've always tried to look at it as like something that I want to smoke.
Yeah.
I grew up in New York, so I love gas. I don't think that's ever going to come out of me, but I love the fruit. The last couple rounds I've been breeding for hash. I have a couple farms up in Nevada County, and for the last couple of years I've been breeding for hash and selections for hash. And like with the state of the industry, it's tough for some of the smaller mom and pops. Like I know there's always the back and forth of, is it indoor better, is it outdoor better, but like I think there's a whole community that has been growing some amazing stuff under, light houses, and been doing a lot of selections for things like that to get into people's hands and the whole hash lines and stuff like that. So I feel like a lot of the profiles have been, everyone's kind of playing in this one little area. Yeah. And I've been trying to get out of that area, like a lot of the GMOs, a lot of the papayas and stuff like that. Like I want to explore and try to get some bigger yields, hash yields, and just have some new profiles. So I've been kind of focusing on that for the last couple of years. Yeah. Not to say that I'm not, breeding for flower as well too, but that's kind of been, a little niche that I've been trying to hit.
And you're doing your selection in greenhouse? For
the most part, yeah. I don't have an indoor right now, so I kind of rely on, some indoor partners. Preferred Gardens, been working with David for years now.
Nice.
He does a lot of selections for me, and like I always try to get it into multiple people's hands to see if I'm right or wrong. And, like I think, our palate sometimes, for me, I lend towards the gas, and, not everyone wants the gas right now too. So, part of it is also, once I do the selections, we put it in tissue culture and get it out to the masses. So it's, like I need multiple validations. I also work closely with Anna from Cam. She's running a lot of the indoor stuff as well as some other smaller indoor partners in Sacramento as well.
Really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the more data, from the nursery side of things, the more data I can get to the cultivators and hand it over, the more successful they're going to be with the plants, with the strains that we're putting out. So
data on when to harvest, data on...
This plant's never fit in a box. And, with crop steering and stuff now, like I've seen some strains that, they like to be pushed a lot harder in veg, and, like they don't like the EC stacking as much. So it's like, the more data I can get on the specific cultivar, I'm trying to kind of package that and give that to cultivators so that, they have a better, head start.
Yeah, I think that's the future is more data. I mean, we're doing data-driven breeding. I think before it was like we pop a bunch of stuff and we do our selections. Now, a lot of us are taking notes, and a lot of us are logging data and trying to capture as much of that as possible so that we get better results in the future.
Yeah.
And the more you know your lines, the better.
Yeah.
It's a...
Yeah, I have a background in computer science. Data collection's always been big for me, even like the old 215. Like I had things stored, encrypted and secured. So, in case the door ever got knocked down, like I wouldn't lose that stuff, know. So I think it's now it's more important than ever. Like, the cultivators really rely on the nurseries, and, every nursery has hurt some of the cultivators. And it's when everyone goes to scale, there's bumps and bruises, like there's been no book written to do this, so it's just, we're all learning. And the more that we can, give the cultivators a head start, I think, that's what I'm really trying to focus on the breeding aspect of it and the data collection.
Totally. No, that's awesome. And you're working with Conception too. You guys are doing big things over there.
Some world-class people, Kevin had a good vision, and me and him, kind of shared the same idea, the same vision. We bring in a lot of breeders that, everything on the menu is actually paid royalties to a breeder, which is unique. If the breeders are actually getting reimbursed for their work and they're more driven for innovation. Right. And, if they can focus on what they do, great. And getting money for that and keeping them in their lane, there's going to be more and more innovation in this industry. And hopefully we get out of this box of, purple gas or candy, I should say. And, I think the markets, like you look at the other markets that have, come and matured and, it's more about terpene profiles and effects and stuff. So hopefully the industry starts catching up. And
well, the spray terp box is in the right direction. Let me tell you, it's comedy though.
But people are buying it, unfortunately.
People are, but people buy vape carts too. So, I mean, it is what it is, but I feel like the breeding is going to go in other directions. I'm already seeing it. I see a lot of people talking about sativa. We've been talking about how sour and OG are making a comeback, and they will. They definitely will. There's a lot of people that want them. And if it's not the original sour, it'll be a sour cross or OG cross. There's a lot of good OG crosses out there.
Yeah.
And there's even purple gas that's out there that's heavy gas.
Sure.
So it's just evolution. So it is exciting. I'm always excited to find new stuff like that we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Rhubarb. I'm looking for some rhubarb. Stuff like that. The nostalgic things that I think of when I was a kid, it's like pancakes is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because it smells like pancake.
I remember the first time I saw chocolate Thai.
Yeah.
It really smelled like chocolate.
Yeah.
It was on the stick and it was wrapped up. For me, I grew up on brick, Mexican brickweed.
Yeah.
But we started getting some of the BC bud, the beasters. We moved a lot of that. I remember the first time I saw purple weed actually, and I was looking at it in a mason jar being like, I didn't know that bud could look like that, and then seeing chocolate Thai stick, that was like mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
So it never smelt anything like it.
Right.
Still haven't to this day. Still searching.
Searching for that. Making it come back. Yeah. I feel like there's some interesting chocolate crosses out there. The chocolate there's that chocolate hashberry back in the day that was kind of chocolatey, but that wasn't super chocolatey.
Yeah.
And same thing with chocolate it has a hint of chocolate. So, but yeah, and these things will reoccur. The genetic recombination will provide those genetics again at some point, those unique traits. So you do seed production too, and you make seeds. You make a bunch of seeds and crosses. And
we just I did a collaboration with Jock at Spanibus this year.
Nice.
With Terpog, took the original Skittles, more like hash focus line. Cross that to a bunch of stuff. We're finding some amazing phenos out of that.
Yeah.
Found a couple that are pressing at like over 5% with, a Skittle guava, kind of like a rotten Skittle smell. Doing seed production. Released another line, a reg line with Farming Stone, another hash line, great line, like OGZ, cross to papaya, rainbow belts, and another whole line that I was doing Skittles, Hindu Skittles, papaya, cross the shots.
Hindu Skittles.
Really?
Maybe I haven't had a good one. And that's totally possible. I feel like bagging on strains is tough because maybe it wasn't grown by the right person, or maybe it is good and I didn't get the right cut, or even the same cut.
Yeah.
Or even the same cross. Yeah, my experience with Hindu Skittles, I got excited and I was at a dispensary and I bought 2 bags of it because it was like buy one, get one free, and it was Hindu Skittles. I'm like, dude, it's got to be amazing. And it just wasn't Skittly.
Was it flour or rosin?
Flour.
Okay. Yeah, I've had it really more in rosin.
Yeah.
It makes candy funk. It's got like some raunchiness. Like they did the Hindu Skittles papaya. It was like rotten fruit.
Yeah.
And I hit that to a couple. I hit it to the Fatso. I hit it to the Zods. I hit it to a couple different things. Blueberry Thin Mint, which I'm calling Blue Andes. Nice. And it's given a lot of depth of flavor.
Yeah, Skittles crosses are tricky.
Yeah.
Breeding with Skittles is tricky. I think there's a lot of recessive traits. Then if you breed stuff and you want Skittles, you're looking for the structure that's not as good.
It's a hard terpene to pull out.
Yeah, that candy in there. And then we had some Skittles back crosses that leaned heavy on the CBG. Flow Gardens just got some COAs done.
Nice.
It was like some ridiculous amount of CBG. So I'm excited to try some of that flower out.
Nice, yeah. Sounds good.
I like Skittles. I like candy. I like flavor.
Yeah.
But Skittles is special.
Yeah, I've always, like in the old days, it was always like the nose sold the bag. So, I've been doing a lot of selections based off of loud terpenes, profiles. With some of the breeding that's done now or the selections, like, I feel like we've lost. It becomes, a little monoterp or, a little more.
Is ruined weed.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting, but yeah, Instagram is ruined weed. It's that monoterp and all those things. As far as why the flower isn't as good, I think a lot of it is social media because you don't actually have to smell it. You don't actually have to taste it or feel the effect of it. You look at it, and a lot of people are basing the quality on. And some of that stuff looks amazing, and it just doesn't smell.
Yeah,
so much of it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. That's where the marketing side comes in.
Yeah.
I think that's where California kind of went wrong too. I miss like opening a jar at a dispensary and smelling it.
Right.
And now it's like, I've seen a lot of people with the push tops and it, kind of pushes it to you, but like the weed sits in that jar for months, I'm sure. You lose that, like some of the other, someone just told me that Oregon still does the deli, like you still pop it open, they pull it out and package it there for you. So
really cool. That's how it should be. I mean, I think there's a freshness involved, and if you lose the freshness of the product, it's like just like anything. No one likes day old bread or stale bread.
No,
I guess Wonder Bread stays fresher a lot longer, but
I'm sure there's a lot of preservatives.
Exactly. But yeah, it's interesting, these different markets, and then New York expanding and doing their thing, and I think it's great. They have their own set of problems.
Yeah. It was funny. I went out there 2 420s ago, and I grew up there, and New York is. Weed has been in the culture in New York for as long as I've been alive, and I was excited. I was in Washington Square Park with everybody and seeing, just everyone coming together and stuff like that. But, they have the same problem that, Los Angeles dealt with the whack-a-moles, they take out one, illegal dispensary and 3 more pop up. So they're going to have their, they're going to have some growing pains. I do think it's going to be one, if you look at the sales volume, I think it'll be, one of the top for sales for the country. Like I said, everyone loves it there. We have some seeds that are over there now, and I'll be doing some marketing at the end of the summer, flying out there, looking at some strains we have, working with a group out there that they're planting like 6 or 7 acres between a couple different areas. It's cool. One of the farms is right where I grew up. So, probably 15, 20 minutes from where I grew up. So
wow,
I'm excited to see it there.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I can't wait for interstate commerce.
Yeah,
I think that's just, for what you guys are doing at Conception and for what we're doing, and it's going to be just such a big game changer when it opens up. And, there's all these loopholes now that, I think those loopholes will go away eventually. But they need to have it done so we can do it the right way, where there will be interstate commerce, where cultivators will be able to sell to other states.
Yeah.
That's just silly that you can't go to New York and buy California weed legally. You should be able to, just like any other agricultural product or anything you buy in the grocery store.
The rescheduling is not exactly what we want, but I think it's a step in the right direction. And hopefully, we got to keep pushing and trying to make it better. But I think it is, at least a step in the right direction. I haven't had the chance to read the full, bylaws that were just passed.
This morning.
Yeah.
This morning, I guess they released it. I saw Omar Figueroa posted about it. But yeah, and then we have the opportunity to comment on it for the next few months.
90 days or so.
Yeah, 90 days.
I think it's something that's gotta happen. It's
got to happen. And Schedule 3's, people are like, man, any step is a good step, I feel. I really I think it should be descheduled 100%, but at the same time we need to move forward. And I think there's a lot of people fighting for what's right.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I hope that it really opens up, like interstate commerce.
Yeah.
I think we have an oversupply issue in California, and it needs to be addressed. And it's not wine; it doesn't get better with age. So
no,
we can keep the supply coming.
Turn it all into rosin, then you're good. Freeze it. Yeah. I mean, really, extract is the only thing to do when you have an oversupply of product. Unfortunately, since we can't sell it to other states.
Yeah.
But Oregon has the same thing. They produce some ridiculous amount more than they can consume.
I know they were trying to push the envelope for a while, trying to open up interstate commerce between, a couple other states. And I think the whole CBD, the whole farm bill has really pushed the rescheduling or, these whole talks, because it's really cat's out of the bag, and they need to figure out how to, control it a little bit better and create a little bit more of a thriving economy off of it,
For sure. So what's the new, hottest, latest, greatest thing in Conception?
There's a bunch. As far as like the candy lovers, there's a lemon cherry sherbet.
Nice.
It's a collaboration between Tiki Madman and Mario from Sherbinski.
Nice.
So it's the lemon cherry gelato cross original sunset sherbet. I love the sunset sherbet. It's one of those ones that I feel like didn't really get like its day in the sun.
It totally didn't.
It was like,
totally didn't.
Like the sherbet came out kind of like at the same time, I guess, that Skittles came, and Skittles kind of blew up for a second, and it was like a real quick rush into the gelatos, and then the gelatos took over, and that was it.
Yeah. I mean, sherbet's special. So I love everything about it. It grows, it produces amazing flower. It yields pretty good. The purple on it's amazing. Yeah. It's a special one. It definitely didn't get its fair share, it's fair day. And yeah, I remember that whole thing very vividly from the Bay Area, and it's like, sure, it was killer. Still is.
It is. So yeah, I'm excited for that one. I've been working with Mario for years now, and I remember the original sunset sherbet I had got 10 years ago or something, but I grew it for a long time and vended it a lot across California, and then started working with him a couple years after that, and then got to grow the real one. I was like, oh man, I've never had the real one, like it's so loud, and I like that funk that really has. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the new ones. I have a blueberry thin mint. So it was like two of the original strains that like I brought through tissue culture. The original thin mint I had gotten from a friend early on. It wasn't even called cookies yet. It wasn't even called, it came to me as a cosmic or something like that. And I remember growing it. At that time, I was growing a lot of sours and OGs. And I remember growing it and like looking at it, just being like freaking out, being like, this isn't going to yield anything, And it was, golf balls all the way up, dry it, fast forward, trimmers are trimming it, come inside, and there's like, bags like this big. I was like, is this a quarter pound? Is this half pound? Like, what is this? They're like, no, it's a full pound, And I think the Girl Scout was like such a game changer, from what we were growing. That hit the market, and everyone was just like, wow. At that point, I was living up in Lake Tahoe in Truckee.
Yeah.
Like we were growing in the garage, and it was before like, AC systems and stuff like that. I used to drag cold air from we'd run the lights at night, drag it through the garage and suck it out the other end. And I mean, it would come out black.
Yeah.
And
did you have like hoods that had airflow through?
We started
the 6 inches,
the fours.
Yeah, right.
Those are great hoods. Like, I mean, I actually like looking back now, like I pulled some really great numbers off of those hoods, even going through glass and stuff. Like
we had cool tubes. We did vertical growing with the octagons with the cool tubes. I mean, interesting ways of doing it back before we had before mini splits, right? Mini splits were such a game changer.
I remember we started putting reams. I don't remember who came up with the idea, but we're just like, let's just stick a ream, like home, system into the garage and started cooling that way. And that's when, you saw the big jump from the lights. The Gavitas started showing up and stuff like that. And we're like, can't cool this, like we got to figure something out. So yeah. The reams came along and the rest is history.
Yeah, it's interesting, these evolutions and feminized seeds. I fought back on a bunch of stuff. Like feminized seeds, I was like, nah, you can't do feminized seeds. It's going to ruin the gene pool.
Right.
And then autoflowers, I was very against autoflowers in the beginning. I was like,
there were some bad ones at the beginning.
Dude, there were some bad ones 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It was like, I saw them and I'm like, I'm never growing autoflowers, ever.
Yeah.
And then my buddy Nick showed me a greenhouse full of autoflowers, and I couldn't believe that they're autoflowers.
Yeah.
Like, amazing. And the blurples, the purple LEDs, nobody that grew good ever used those, though. And in my opinion, I know at least the circle of friends that I had, like everybody that wanted to show me their blurples, it was like, dude, terrible weed. And I'm like, never, I'm not using, because that's, at the time I was like, oh, that's LED. I don't want to use LED, like HPS or CMH. I like CMH.
Mm-hmm. I used to checkerboard with CMH too.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. I think you get amazing flavor. But it's funny how like Blue Dream grows better under HPS than CMH. I feel like the expression is better. It can handle the heat more too. So that Blue Dream used to grow like crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it seems now like so many people are still talking about the single-ended, bulbs, like, like the double ender for like some of the connoisseurs. They don't want to still, they still think that was the best, best weed that they ever smoked.
Yeah. Well, I heard OG grows really good under CMH. Like that's the one if you want to grow.
Makes sense. I guess the light intensity is not as intense, I guess. Mm-hmm. PBFDs are probably lower than CMHs, right?
Probably. Yeah. I mean, that's probably why it does better.
Yeah. I always felt like, the OGs always just grew better outdoors for me. I couldn't. Jay was great at growing OGs and inside. I always like to put the OGs outside. I
love good outdoor. And I forget for periods of time, and then I get some good outdoor, and I'm like, I love really good outdoor. Like the effect, also the flavor, and I feel like the rich flavor of a good outdoor, like a good OG that's been grown outdoors, where it's got that gas that's just down to the roach. Not that indoor OG is bad. Indoor OG is friggin' amazing. Yeah. It's like Brian Vital. His OG's fire. That stuff is amazing, and I love that stuff. But good OG that's been grown outdoors. Most outdoor flower grown correctly is good. Yeah. But there's that 1% of stuff where it's like, oof. Yeah. That white thorn rose is another one. Right. It's like sun grown. And the taste is really good. It has like a floralish rose, like vanilla and almond is in there. Like it's complex. Yeah. And then the effect just clean.
I think my favorite is the mixed light. The addition of some light, like sunlight and artificial light.
Right.
There's been a handful of strains that I've grown indoors, outdoors, and then you put it into a mixed light, and the expression it gets is just it's night and day.
Well, I think it's the future too. I honestly think mixed light is the future of cannabis in the world. As far as if you're talking about the best bang for your buck, if you want for quality, not that outdoor is, outdoor's amazing too, but as far as if you want an indoor product, I think eventually we're going to go away from these big facilities and really focus on mixed light.
Yeah, I think it has to, especially in California, like the cost to produce is just astronomical. The power prices that we pay here, it's too much. There's some growers, Preferred Gardens and Lucas from Emerald Kid, like Turk Mansion, like their light supplemental is, will go up against anyone's indoor. And I think the only thing you get from the outdoors is like the shelf life is a little shorter.
What do you think that's contributed from?
I don't know. The oxidation just breaks down quicker. Like I've never really, was actually having this conversation with David the other day. Like I've never been able to put my finger on it. He hasn't either. It's just like, I don't know. The sun just breaks it down quicker, or once it gets in a bag, you have a shorter shelf life.
Huh. Interesting. It'd be interesting to figure out where that comes from. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the mixed light and just greenhouse in general, and I think it's better for the planet. I think it's as good, if not better, of products. You have the sun in there.
Sun-kissed.
Sun-kissed. You gotta love the sun-kissed.
Yeah.
And then even in the winter, you can do mixed light.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the little cooler temps.
Some under canopy. It's like a little shout out to Faven.
Yeah.
These guys, Craft Farmer Faven, these guys doing under canopies. But yeah, I like the Favens. I've seen really good results. We're running them here.
Yeah, it's cool to see the new, like I said, I have a background in tech, so to see the new innovations that are happening, and I think that's one of the good things, even with this rescheduling, right? Like it's Schedule 1, the government's saying there's no medical benefit, right? Mm-hmm. We're getting Schedule 3. If it goes that way, like they're saying, okay, well, there is some benefit, right? It's the small steps. But again, now it's going to open up more money to really start doing R&D. R&D is expensive,
So expensive.
and that's where the evolution needs to go, and it needs to get pushed a little faster. Hopefully the 280E disappears and bank, real banking and lending starts coming out of this. Totally. And it's just going to push the innovation, quicker.
Right. And we have countries like Israel that are just so far ahead of us with
40 years ahead of us.
Testing and studies. But we have the opportunity to change at any moment. And so, I think that part of it definitely is a good thing. The government's known it's been okay for all this time, and now they're finally like, okay.
Well, I mean, they've held the patent on, cannabis as a medicine, right? Like
since the 70s.
Right. And at the same time in Schedule 1. So, once I realized that, it's just, it was always just a money grab and them just trying to control with lobbyists. And, you look at the history and it's sad. I mean,
strange world we live in.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, unfortunately. But hopefully some of the, the old ways are starting to die off. And even my grandparents, when I told them, what I was getting into, it took a second for them to like, that's good. It helps people, but it's very addictive. And I'm like, no, like Reefer Madness, like probably is one of the best marketing campaigns of all time. Yeah. Like we're still trying to break those chains, like
for sure.
We recently moved from Truckee down to Grass Valley and like learning new friends. I mean, we have a farm on our property and it's just like, having new friends and having to like disclose that to, kids, parents and stuff like that. Most of the people have been open, but it's still like, people still look at you a little different, and it's
for sure
50, 60 years of this bad information just beat into people's heads.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in high school we used to get high and watch Reefer Madness.
Totally.
But people really thought that's what it did.
Don't wash it on acid. You'll have a bad trip. That's a great way to do it. Watch it over and over.
Right.
That's the comedy, man. Yeah, it's funny how impactful that was.
Yeah.
And how many people still, I mean, there's a lot of people, over 50% of America is fine with it, I believe.
I think like the last poll is like pushing 70, it's like 65, 68%. Like I said, the cat's out of the bag. And actually it took my grandmother, she had rheumatoid arthritis, and I would send her CBD cream.
Yeah.
And she was like, wow, this is actually starting to work. So I think the CBD, the whole farm bill, like really helped people realize it's not the devil's lettuce. It's not going to, people aren't going to run amok jumping out of buildings, like it helped and, push, I think, where we're going, a lot quicker.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like stuff like you hear THCA and you think, oh, that shit gets you high. And yes, it does. But also, if you don't heat it up, it does not.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I ate a gram of THCA, I have ulcerative colitis. And so my good friend Tim over at Kounter Organics made a bunch of THCA for me. And I had tried eating it I was a little nervous eating a gram of it because I know eating a gram of THC, like 1,000 milligrams, would get me good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I did it. It doesn't get you high at all. But it did have a good effect on my gut health. Yeah. So anti-inflammatory properties. And, these are the things that we're going to be researching.
Yeah.
And, exponentially faster than we could before.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that part of Schedule 3. Now, how they tax it and how they do other things, people are like, they're not going to tax it. No, Uncle Sam taxes everything.
They're going to tax the shit out of it, unfortunately.
You want to know who your silent partner is? It's Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
It's just how it goes. But, we have to move forward.
I think the biggest win here is that, they're now finally saying that not the devil, it's not, there is some benefit to it. And, I think a lot of us got into this understanding the benefits and wanting to, I think one of the problems with 64 is that like we used to donate to this group of children in Nevada County in the 215, a lot of our trim. And a lot of those avenues like disappeared with 64, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And we were making some great strides and working with kids with epilepsy and all sorts of, issues. And I'm happy to see that kind of come back now. Real doctors and real people getting involved and trying to isolate some.
Yeah. I mean, during the 215 days, it was like some of the doctors were a little, You know, there were Dr. Frank Lucido, one of the greatest doctors I've ever known, you know, and he was like really about it. And then there was doctors that were about the money grab, you know, they're a little,
the 99 plant.
Yeah.
It's 125 for this script, or it's 300 for this script,
or 500. Yeah. I remember at one point, some of the doctors were charging 500 for a 99 script. Yeah. Frank Lucido was great. He just retired last year, but he was writing scripts. So he was one of the first ones. So he also wrote my buddy's younger brother when he was 14 script.
Yeah.
He had medical issues, but he was a believer in the plant and all the benefits that the plant could give us. And I would love to get him on the show. He'd be a great one.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard you say it for a long time, and it always stuck with me. It was, you know, the sacred plant. And like I said, R&D is expensive, but like, you know, hopefully we can keep pushing it and seeing what we can do. I mean, we lost 50, 60 years to not really being able to see what this plant can do. So I'm excited, you know, for the next iteration of the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just happy to be alive. You know, we're taking this thing one day at a time and seeing where the future, I try to live in the present as much as possible and not get too excited about the future or too upset about the past. And we're in an amazing time. On some levels, we're in the strangest friggin' weird place ever.
Yeah.
I never thought there'd be a time where I didn't understand the younger generation. Yeah, because I feel like that's always like the case. And it's like, I just don't get some of the kids these days. And you know, I feel like how my parents and my grandparents thought about the work ethic of my generation is kind of how I feel about the work ethic of the younger generation. It's like, I feel like our generation has like this work ethic, and you know, not all of us. There's a lot of lazy friends that I grew up with, but a lot of people do have work ethic. And then the younger generation, I think with technology, it's made life easier, made people softer. But like my father's generation and my grandfather's generation, those guys were way tougher than our generation. I feel like
absolutely,
these guys were made of leather.
Yeah. No, I you know, my parents were both like first generation. My dad's side came from Norway. My mom's side from off the boat from Italy.
Yeah.
You know, and some of the things that I grew up watching, your stories that I heard, and like, you know, visibility, like saw, like my dad and my uncle had to like literally dig out underneath the house to make a basement, have like a, you know, like a den for everybody, you know, like at like 10, 12 years old, you know, just digging, things like that. And I grew up in a construction family, and I get dropped off after kindergarten. I get dropped off to my dad's job site and have to run around, pick up pieces of wood and clean up, you know, at the end of the day. And now like we kind of live on a farm. So like my kids are all of a sudden have a huge chore list to do, you know, and they're not happy about it. Like they weren't around that, but now it's like, you know, we live on a big, you know, piece of property, and
everyone has their responsibilities. Mexico, that's another interesting place with cannabis now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mexico, Colombia, especially being, you know, around the equator.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like what they did to, you know, like the flower industry and stuff. Like I've done a lot of work over the years in Monterey, and, you know, like watching that, you know, get moved to South America. Like it's, you know, wonder how that's going to affect, you know, cannabis going, you know, I think the breeding's great, you know, like being in a 12-12 and not having to you manipulate the lights at all. Like I think it could be a great area to breed. But
well, you're breeding for different things down there, like humidity, you know, and things that do well in that 12-12 environment. You could take something that performs really well here and bring it down there, and it might not perform, and something that sucks up here and bring it down there, and it might perform really well. Also, you could take something here that you think is going to be a certain way, you bring it down there, and it's completely different. So that's the beautiful thing about, you know, climate and localized genetics that work well for those local environments. I mean, we talk about land race, bringing the race back to the land, I guess.
Again, going back to innovation, you know, being, you know, through regulations getting spurred, right? Like we're breeding for, you know, not just the effects of the terpenes, but also breeding for like traits we're looking for, you know, like there's, you know, some that are, you know, botrytis resistant or pest resistant, like, you know, again, that's where I feel like we're going to make some leaps and bounds over the next couple of years if the rescheduling happens. And
I think there's a lot of traits that people don't even think about.
Okay.
You know, when they're doing breeding, a lot of breeders aren't even thinking about, like, does this plant trigger faster than this plant?
Yeah.
Because those sort of traits can be extremely beneficial in places that have shorter seasons.
Right.
And not everything triggers at the same point.
Yeah.
But there's so many traits like that.
Yeah. No, I grew one this past year that outside, like, it won't trigger until it gets right at 12, Yeah. And had it still up in November, getting to Thanksgiving. But if you put it in a depth and manipulate the light, triggers and it finishes quicker.
Right.
So it's fun. Like, I love breeding. I love, the pheno hunting side of things. I think, that's often overlooked.
Right.
Everyone wants to be a breeder.
They all want to be a breeder, but they all just want to make seeds. They don't. Right. Not all of them. Some people love it.
Yeah.
But a lot of people think the breeding is making the seeds, and that's like the smallest part of the whole breeding process. Yeah. Is this? And it's the part that anybody can do. It's the seed selection and going through, and sometimes just hitting the lottery with stuff.
Yeah.
And other times knowing your line really well and knowing that you need to pop 20 seeds and you're going to find kind of what you're looking for. People argue about big hunts and little hunts, and it's different for everybody and what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
If you're trying to find unicorns, and you're going through big hunts, that's cool. And if you're trying to find specific things in smaller hunts, that's good too. How much of your resources you want to dedicate to one specific cross or to tons of different crosses?
I think like now the whole concept of curation, is being thrown around a lot. But I think on the pheno hunt side, like knowing what you're looking for is, and being able to pull that right thing out. Like, it's
for sure.
It's a whole new trait, or like that I think is overlooked a lot. And
there's a whole art to it too,
of course,
and also knowing your lines, because the more you work with those lines, the more you know them, and you know kind of what it's going to pass on, like depending on what the parents are, and you can easily identify stuff if you work with it a lot. But if you're working with completely new stuff all the time, it's harder to get a grasp of really what's contributing what.
And I think that's unfortunately where the industry is, right? It's like everyone wants a new hottest thing, but the people that I grew up around, breeding and stuff, like they worked lines for years and years and years, to get something. And I think that's one of those arts that have kind of been lost now.
A lot of my stuff that I've worked a lot, I don't even offer because people don't appreciate it.
Yep.
So stuff that we've been working for the last 4 years, since 2018 especially, like I don't share a lot of the autoflowers, yes. Mm-hmm. But the photo period stuff, not so much, because people just don't appreciate it. They want RS11 times permanent marker, or whatever it is, the latest greatest crossed with the latest greatest.
Yeah.
Whatever your latest greatest crossed with everybody else's latest greatest. That's kind of what people are super hyper focused on. But I think we are going back. My banana cough has been selling like crazy, which is the Fort Collins cough times banana Z that I made.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that it has a great bud structure. I wouldn't say that it finishes early. But it's special, because that Fort Collins cough is like the NL5 haze, like the Piff, Cuban Black Haze. There's so many NL5 haze crosses that are good. And Fort Collins cough is special, and it spears out and it grows tall and short. It doesn't bush out at all. It just kind of shoots up.
Okay.
You get a lot of apical growth, where it's just like one main shoot and then side branches that are all smaller. But it has this crazy, funky, like nose burning profile that's not like your typical sativa, which is what I like, which is kind of like Piff is like that too. It's not a typical sativa. And so you put some candy on there and you're going to get some real funky stuff.
I like sometimes taking both ends of the spectrum and putting them together and seeing what you get. Like,
I almost think that's better.
So, yeah.
It's like one thing just putting all the gelato with another gelato, and it's fine.
Yeah.
But going real extreme on stuff where it's like, I'm going to take the shortest plant that grows the slowest and then put it with the most vigorous, crazy plant that gets super tall that I need shorter.
Yeah.
And seeing what comes off of that. We're doing some wild pheno hunting right now, and we have some stuff that's completely like the opposite. I have stuff that's 6 weeks old that's like still only this, but it's like bush. And then we have some stuff that's like 5 feet tall.
The feminized portion is unique too, like understanding the lines, and then all of a sudden it's like an onion sometimes. Like all of a sudden you take another layer off and you're like, I didn't know that was in there. Like all of a sudden something, right field, you're like, where the hell did that come from?
What's like the Skittles S1s?
Yeah.
Like you get a lot of stuff most of it's not Skittles, not Skittly, not stuff that and there's also terpinolene, like limonene and terpinolene in the freaking progeny too when you cross Skittles to itself. Yeah, First Class Genetics, my buddy Ray, he had some problems with his Skittles, and it was definitely terpinolene dominant.
Really?
After, epigenetics.
Okay.
Which we can still argue whether epigenetics exists or not, but I definitely think so my first experience with that was the Ghost OG and Josh D OG, where they'd gone through two different places and grown side by side. They're similar, but they're totally different. And so those have taken two different paths, even though at one point they were a clone off of the same plant, and they're different.
Do you think that's like from style or for like, I don't want to say genetic drift because it's
whatever, epigenetics. It's those plants experience bacterial load and who knows, pathogens over the period of time, and maybe they fight off some, and maybe there's good bacteria that changes in the plant. So there's these chemical changes that occur. Maybe it's not just genetics, but they can be different expressions and be very similar. And, I grew them side by side and saw that. So, but that's been the argument lately. Like, is epigenetics real? Is, for sure all this stuff is real, but to what extent? And then what does tissue culture do?
I was just going to say that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I know that's kind of a hot topic right now. I was just listening to another podcast where like, oh no, the hormones change the structure of the plant and stuff like that. And, definitely have done like fingerprinting the DNA and looking at it before and after. And, there's no change that's happening right at the DNA level. Mm-hmm. But I think if you look at styles, good bacteria, bad bacteria, pests, all that stuff plays into it, right? Like even microclimates too. Like that's not really about a lot too, like in Grass Valley, like I think it's one of the best microclimates in California, and what I can do there, what I can pull out of, a strain, and we grew in the Central Valley for 5 or 6 years, so it's like totally different, But I think this is all becoming like fashion. It's becoming cyclical, and seeing some of the old stuff come back. Honestly, like tissue culture, we knew we had to do it, at one point, like, when me and Jay got together, like it was really, we were trying to do it for in-house, like for what we were developing, trying to clean up the genetics. Like at that point, like, coming from the 215 into the 64 error. Yeah. I remember Crockett growing in Monterey, and that's when the first time we started learning about pesticide drift, right? Like, and then what's in those plants too. Like, we all shared genetics back then. You didn't know what someone's IPM protocols were, like they were spraying some bad stuff, you get it, and microbutanol and forbid, like that stuff was in there for generations. Yeah. And we really went down the route of tissue culture to remove that. And we were trying to develop our property in Yolo County, was hitting like a bunch of speed bumps, and all of a sudden there's like thousands of plants, starting to back up, and we became a nursery by accident, like Jay, I just remember like standing in there with Jay and Bo and the nursery, and we're looking at all these plants, like we have nowhere to put them. It's like, I guess we start selling them, and even like tissue culture. I remember, at the Emerald Cup, we were sitting there. We didn't have enough plants to sell at this point. We were trying to tell everyone what we were doing. And this would have been like 16, 17, I think. Yeah. And people at the Emerald Cup were like, I'd say like 25% got it. And like we were like showcasing, we had like 10 plants to showcase, Yeah. And people were looking at us like, multiple people, oh, this is GMO, like you and Monsanto were like, this is a practice that has been used for 40 years totally. in trying to explain it, why it's so important.
And tough at Emerald Cup though.
Oh yeah, I mean the old days.
No.
Yeah. I mean, I have so many people like in the old days, like all you need to do is put that genetic back outside for a full moon cycle. It'll be totally the same again. It'll like reset everything.
Yeah, well, and so it's funny because DJ Short, he told me, this is a long time ago, when I was super excited about tissue culture. Like I was like, this is the Bill Graham, when Bill Graham was the tissue culture guy back in, 2009 or 2010 or something like that. I was super excited, and I was sitting next to DJ Short, and I was telling him how I want to learn tissue culture. And he's like, actually, all you need to do is put that plant in the ground, and you do that in the spring, and you're going to take fresh cuts every year off that, and you'll get the same results as tissue culture. Well, depending on whose tissue culture, because I'm sure you might get better results than certain people that are doing tissue culture that don't know what they're doing. And there's different types of tissue culture. People don't understand that either. They think all tissue culture is the same, and it's not. Mirror stem tissue culture, when you're using undifferentiated cells, it's a lot harder to do.
A lot more time consuming. And then just being able to do nodal properly. And I think there's a lot of these kits, and the kits are great ways for people to learn and develop an understanding for tissue culture. But I don't think they are the future of tissue culture. Most people are going to have labs. Like you have a lab, I have a lab. We have labs. We have technicians that know what they're doing, and you can learn some of it on your own. But to take it to the level that you guys are at is very, very difficult for most people. Yeah, and I think understanding that at scale is very few people that can do it in the world. You
guys are at a scale that no one else is at. I mean, no one else is even touching it. It's pretty amazing.
It's cool. It's cool to see. Like I said, it's world-class group of people. There is a pathologist from UC Davis. She actually wrote most of the primers for PCRs and stuff like that.
Wow.
To see some of the people that, again, I'm a geek at heart. Like I wrote software, developed hardware too for 15 years as I was like also in cannabis, growing in my garage. So I'm a geek at heart. So for me, like bringing, a form of tech or biotech in with cannabis is my dream space. And we started it at Finest, like when me and Jay, and this is like just the next iteration, and Conception is also now like getting ready to open up a lab in Portugal. And, we've spent time in Spain the last couple of years together and, trying to get into the Germany market. Like it's
best dinners ever.
It's cool to see, like, like I think a lot of people are looking at California and the problems we have here, but like I think we're in, we're all kind of treading water, but like I think the good time is still coming. It's a lot of people talk about the good old times, but I think moving forward from genetics and just the science side of things, like I think we're really starting to push hard.
So with tissue culture, I wanted to do this subject justice in my book. And so we had Matt Schneider from Apical Biotech. He wrote the chapter, and I didn't really touch the chapter. But I feel like it's such an important thing to have an understanding of moving forward in the future, because if you want clean genetics, either you're going to be growing from seed or you're going to be going from tissue culture plants. It's not a lot of clone propagation unless it was from tissue culture, because there's so many problems with everything, not just hop latent. And I think a lot of people focus on hop latent viroid, but it's like that's just one of 20 issues. More than that, one of 50 issues it could probably have.
And I think we're still learning about them too, right? The whole nodal meristem. Right now, like we test for 40 pathogens, right? And okay, it's clean. You can use nodal, or do you use meristem? Like back and forth. We do both. And I think meristem is also a kind of like an insurance policy. Like, what if we find something new that has been sitting in that tissue? We're just propagating. Right. It's interesting. And then I don't know if you read the article, Kevin McNamara from Medicinal Genomics just started talking a lot about HPLVD being, transmitted now through pollen. Like we thought it was, just through dirty.
I haven't read that yet.
It's pretty interesting.
Definitely need to read that, because I was always curious whether you can transmit hop latent through pollen.
I think we talked about that on the first time on the podcast, right? Like
totally.
At that point, like people thought 10, 15%, and don't quote me on the exact number, but I think it was 50, 60%. Like he's saying like
50, 60% transmission rate.
Yeah.
That's why, because we were saying Purple City Genetics did a study and they found 10% transmission, or 7, I believe it was 7 to 10. But Kevin McKernan, whatever he says, I would go with a lot of the stuff that he says. He's super smart. They're doing some amazing stuff over there. And, also resistant strains. Find stuff that's resistant to hop latent viroid.
Well, and everything that we bring into culture at Conception actually gets tested with medicinal genomics.
Yeah.
So we're doing the mapping of the genome. But, we're also trying to work super...
You guys are doing full genome?
Yeah, on everything. Yeah. Like the whole mine proposition is, like a nursery, like this is this, right? And whose word are you taking? Are you taking my word? Like, where did I get it from? Like, did I get the right one? Did I get the wrong?
Yeah, we're using my flora DNA. Right. Same idea, but it's like the fingerprinting technology is there. Yeah. You might not be able to tell if it was a sister or if it was 100% if it was related, but at least you could tell if it's the exact same thing. Yeah. And it just keeps us all honest because there's so much cut fishing going on. The cut fishing game is just, it's so bad. And it's like, it's been going on forever because somebody gets something, they're like, well, they want to protect whatever. Same thing with crosses down the road. It's like, I mean, I understand people wanting to rename stuff to protect their IP because we can't fully protect IP, but like renaming other people's stuff, that's a joke.
Yeah.
So taking credit for other people's work, that's a joke.
Yeah. It's sad.
It's sad and it's been happening, but we can see the future of it not happening. Yeah. You guys can make sure it doesn't happen, that, at least to the best of your ability. Yeah. And that's all we can do.
Yeah. I mean, like right now, none of this is enforceable, right? Because like if you take it to court, where is it going to go? It's going to go
nowhere.
And any federal judge is going to look at it and like, get it out of my court. Right. Like it's still illegal. We're not allowed to be doing this. We can't sue each other,
No.
Yeah, but I think, again, and we're making baby steps and, there are patents getting pushed in.
Well, in selling clones, if you're going to sell clones, you might as well fingerprint it so what it is. And the bigger library you have to put it against, you can find out if it's original, if it's something the same as somebody else's. But it takes baby steps, right? It's one at a time and 1 foot in front of the other until you have a big library.
Well, I think it's important for the genome too. Like, I think, unfortunately, like a lot of the data that the genome's like sequenced against data, again, like the data, who's to say that this is the real data, like
exactly. Who's to say that this OG Kush is the real OG Kush? You're relying on the person that gave it to you.
Yeah.
And that was the problem with Phylos, right? Because there was 70 or 100 different things in there that were named different things other than OG Kush that were just OG Kush.
Yeah.
And so then it becomes like, where did you source it? The only way to really do that, and in my mind, is from the breeder, and holding the breeder accountable. If I think that's an important thing.
I think that's where we're starting, right? Like we're starting, like I said, everything on the menu goes back to the breeder. Yeah. Like not just the royalty, but like the like mapping the genome. Right. Saying, okay, this is, stamped in history of what they created.
Yeah,
we're protecting them. Hopefully, this is also opening up a way for patents and stuff moving forward. Mm-hmm. But it, like when we saw what happened with corn and soy and stuff like that with Monsanto, like none of this work was being done, right? And then all of a sudden Monsanto comes out and, blankets, gets patents on strains, and then starts suing small farmers and forcing them to use seeds. Hopefully this is that path forward. Like we've all put a lot of energy, time, money into creating these things, and this is a way to like, who knows where this industry is going, like hopefully this is one of the ways of like cementing that, this is mine. I've created this, and, stamping that portion. So, and again, like it just, this regulation is going to just start, breeding more innovation.
Yeah. I mean, I think that when you can start really capturing data and holding people to be honest, accountability is so important. Having someone say one thing as opposed to proving one thing where you have the data, and, moving forward, it's going to be a great thing. Yeah. So especially when people like Monsanto or whoever it is, I think there's going to be a lot of people that want to try to grab patents and protect stuff that's not necessarily novel, but that you can't do that. It's got to be original.
Yeah. And I think, again, going back to the genoming, like the sequencing, like that's still a huge portion of this plant that we have not been able to really do R&D on yet, like mm-hmm. the medicinal, the true medicinal side of it.
Yeah.
And the genoming, is a step in that direction.
It's very difficult too. A lot of people don't understand is this studying it is very difficult.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about a plant that changes from micro variables. It can change extremely in a period of 70 days of flower, or, the veg plus the flower, whatever. But we're looking at a chemotype that can be changed by influence of environment or nutrition very easily, right? And sometimes some stress factors could cause it to change, and so it's hard to fully study something that changes so much unless you can have a chemotype that stays the same, where like for manufacturing drugs.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have you saw something on the vine, cut it down, put it in the bag, and be like, "Oh, that's gone. It's not there anymore." You know,
So many times, especially pheno hunting, it's like the winners aren't always the winners. You know, when you're selecting on the plant as opposed to in the bag.
It's amazing what a day or two can do too. Like
Oh, yeah.
I'll walk in and be like, "Wow, that's amazing," and then tomorrow's gone. You know, it's just what? Yeah, was it environmental? Was it, you know, just one portion of that? You know, that makeup showing per second. You know.
Yes. Well, and then these flavor molecules can be deceiving. So a lot of people, if you go by just the smell and you don't actually taste it, sometimes the taste isn't there.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. It smells like mild, but then you taste it, it's like, wow, it's overwhelming. It's not always the case. A lot of stuff that's loud is loud when you smoke it too.
Sure.
But it's interesting, some of the stuff that have like softer like smell on the nose, and then you hit it and it's like, wow, it's like, then you get softer terps, but sometimes they're just amazing.
Yeah. I think Skittles was like a perfect example of that. Like,
yeah.
I remember a friend in Truckee had a mobile dispensary up there, and that was the first time I ever saw Skittles. Like I was dropping off some pounds to him for the menu, and he was like, "Check this out," and I pick up the bag, and it's Dep, you know, and at this time Dep's probably going for $2,000, $2,200, and he's like, "This is Skittles," and I was like, "Kind of ugly," you know, and
so I think people usually say, right, when they
and I was like, "What'd you pay for this?" He's like, $3,600. I was like, "What?" He's like, open it and smell. I was like, "That is different," you know? And he's like, "Now let's go smoke it," you know? And yeah, I mean, it's never judge a book by its cover. And I think a lot of these competitions are done wrong too. Like, I wish everything's a blind taste test, and like, I think that's how it should be done.
That's how we do our pheno hunts. Right. It's like everybody gets joints now. No one gets flower. I know what the flower looks like. Let's just smoke it, and then we can talk about the taste and the effect.
Fortunately, it goes back to the marketing, the Instagram. Like, you know, people want to see it. Like, yeah,
I mean, I'm excited about the day where they trust the brand enough to where they don't have to see the flower. They can just buy the pre-roll and be super happy and pay premium prices on a premium flower pre-roll that they're getting super fresh. But that also, they need to smoke it fresh, especially something like a joint where it's been ground up and then put into a piece of paper and smoked. You want to smoke that sooner than later. They don't have as long of a shelf life once you start fucking with it.
You know, I definitely see brand, you know, recognition and brand loyalty. Yeah. Like you said, like, it's tough. It's, you know, like here in California, like, you know, consumer packaged product, like, it takes a month to get it to the shelf. Yeah. You know, like, it's impossible, like, to get it any quicker, you know? But I think, you know, like, D2C is come in California. It hasn't really taken off yet, I think. Right. But, you know, like, hopefully, you know, with the market maturing and stuff, people are going to start, like, becoming loyal to brands, you know, like you see it with wine or beer, you know. And
we have a monthly membership package for seeds, and I can't wait to the day where I can go to all these farmers and all these guys with facilities that I'm friends with, and get some sort of monthly membership package in the mail. You know, where you get the new stuff that's coming down, or maybe you get to be part of the pheno hunt or whatever. I think that monthly membership package is amazing. The concept of it's great, but we can't do it yet in California.
Yeah. I know the county that I'm in is trying to push that farmer's market model. Yeah. You know, there's so many, you know, hoops and things to jump through, but I think it's coming. Yeah.
I mean, you can go to wineries and you can hear stories about the winemaker and how they made the wine, and then get to taste the wine there. I mean, I would love to see Humboldt and Trinity and Mendocino and Sonoma, especially, to be able to go up there and you go check out the farm and you can watch them harvest if they're harvesting, or at least hear the stories and try the flower and, you know, have a chill area. And then you can experience the different terroir from one region to the next, or one climate to the next.
I think that's where, like, the hash side too, like, you know, this is like what we're talking about is usually a little more boutique-y, you know? And I think, you know, I remember the first time cutting down a greenhouse and freezing it. I think it was probably 15, 16, you know, like where there was like, we're coming out of the 215 into the, we weren't regulated yet, but it was just like prices were crashing, but the hash prices were up, and it felt so weird to freeze a whole house. Ended up screwing it up royally. Like, you know, my buddy was like, "Oh, just vacuum seal it, throw it in the freezer." to me, vacuum seal, you pull all the air out and crush the flower and stuff like that. So, but like, I think, being able to put it into a shelf life a little bit longer and stuff like that. Like,
well, and rosin and extract is a great way. It's another one. It's like a joint. You don't actually get to see the flower, and you're just basing it on especially on the taste and the effect, right? So at the end of the day, rosin, you can go by what it looks like a little bit, but dude, that's sort of like the outdoor. These guys are doing outdoor rosin, like top shelf stuff. That's pretty amazing.
Call you a lot, like
yeah,
they do a lot of washing for me on the type 6 side.
Nice.
And I think, that group is one of the best in the business. Also work with paper planes. Like we have a farm together. A lot of that stuff is going to live resin.
I like live resin a lot. And I was up in Washington and I smoked a bunch of amazing live resin up there. And some people are just stuck on the rosin. There's nothing wrong with rosin. Rosin's amazing too. But some good live resin. Yeah. Just Skittles live resin, nuts. It's crazy terps. Like I love that stuff when it's on that level.
Yeah, I mean, I think, BHO, hydrocarbon, got a bad name because of the refinement they were doing for a bit. All the carbons and stuff they were, purifying it with, it just came all monoterp.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. When they're filtering it,
right?
They're using charcoal and some other stuff to filter it and stuff that isn't necessarily healthy.
And I mean, it was like, I remember being up in Humboldt, like people saying, turn your mold into gold, And I think it just goes back to the product you're putting in, whether it's rosin, resin, whatever it is. Like if you're putting quality material in,
quality
product
out.
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
Fire out. I mean, this market, like you have to have price points, like different price regions. Like rosin is a little more higher shelf, right? And not everyone can afford it, but like live resin, a lot of people can afford that, you know? And again, going back to, techniques and things like that and great products.
I remember 2013 when the sauce first came out from Holy Water. Dude, that stuff was so nuts. 30% terps on some of it, which was like terp overload.
Yeah. Seeing some of the first shatter and stuff and smoking it with some friends, it was like cracking and popping. And I'm like,
totally.
I don't know about this stuff.
Yeah.
And again, regulations spurring innovation and getting chemists and stuff involved now, and products are getting better, safer.
Yeah, made in the actual lab environment, not just on someone's porch or stoop. Yeah, interesting times, man. It's great to be part of the evolution of something this big that's going to be this impactful over the next however many years in the future that humanity exists. This is impacting all of that future.
Yeah, and I remember you saying, like, putting out the book and doing this podcast, it's like it's solidifying our stamp on this history, right? People coming, in front of us, or, like, I think with regulation, like a lot of people forget about what we went through, and not just me, but like everybody.
We so easily forget about stuff, right? Unless you document it.
Yeah. And I think it's important because, like, I've been raided, like we've been harassed, like in the county. Like I took a step forward with actually that whole group of children that we were talking about, like, supplying them tinctures and all this stuff. Like our county decided that they wanted to ban all commercial cultivation, and they banned all commercial cultivation. They made the mistake of actually putting it on the ballot to ask the county, like, do you want to regulate cannabis? It was funny. I think like this industry, a lot of times we have so much like headbutting, and you have all these different layers of people. You got the hippies, you got the, all these different people, like, and for once it was cool to be a part of, because like everyone came together because we're like, okay, this is us versus them. And we ended up getting 75% of the vote, like in politics is insane. Strategically, we had some great people helping us, like Heather Burke, lawyer, like she always kept us out of jail. But she really was like pivotal on like structuring this. And, like it was a cool thing to be part of, because we, the county, it's kind of funny. The county, Nevada County, Grass Valley, Nevada City is such a split county, from super crazy liberals to like super crazy conservatives.
Yeah, totally.
And it's like, it's this huge opposite end of the spectrum. And, obviously it was pretty easy to like talk to the liberals, and some of them might not want to, regulation coming, but the conservatives, like we played at different levels and would talk to them about this, also going back to land rights and stuff like that, and just like we came together and was able to like get it overturned and now regulated, and to me, again, I go back, I think it's one of the best microclimates in all of California. Like, it's unique. It's going up to the Sierra Nevadas. It's the foothills, so you're getting like some of the heat coming from the valley, but then also these great little pockets of
super dry too.
Yeah,
super dry. Yeah, I think it's one of the better microclimates in the world. It's funny because between the mid part of California all the way through Oregon, I think for outdoor cultivation, that's the best in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the 7 Mediterranean climates, right? Like, it's like, unfortunately, like, I think when all this kind of figures itself out, like we're advanced to that portion where you can take indoor and you can throw it in New York, throw it in anywhere in the world with the right person running it with the right genetics, like you're going to get a comparable product, right? But again, it's just like, no one has the sun we have here. No one has the climate we have here, and for either hash production or, outdoor, it can't really be.
No, and I'm not saying there's not other places that it can't be grown properly and done well. And I think, there's places in New Mexico and places in Arizona that
I've seen some great hash come out of New York. And I laugh because like I grew up watching, the thunders, storms and the hailstorms, and even portion in New York, it's, hurricanes in September. So it's just like, the weather and stuff that this plant gets beat up out there too. But I've seen some great stuff come out of there.
So Gene West, I don't know if you know Gene. He had kick-ass farms. He's from Grass Valley.
Okay.
He used to be a Marlboro man.
Okay.
Amazing guy.
Name sounds familiar.
Yeah, and he was always doing really creative things that were, I think, really smart. But one of the things he did that shocked me was he did this technique called stalk splitting that you could only do in Grass Valley or in some place that was extremely dry, because he would veg the plants out about, yay high. So, and he would, instead of super cropping or topping them to get the hormones to shoot out more branches, he would take and use a buck knife, split the stalk down, and then tape it at the bottom. And then it would have the same effect as topping, right? And he would have these huge plants with so many bud sites, and he'd do that. So he'd split it crossways, once down, and then he'd split those. And so, I mean, he would run the buck knife down. He had this video that always gives me like the shivers, and I see it like, dude, you're killing that plant. How did you do that? And I went out and saw his plants, and they were just amazing, big, huge, tall plants that he had topped like that. And you could only do that because of botrytis and other fungal pathogens. I think, in my opinion, you could probably only do that in a handful of places in the world and be super successful with it. But he also watered, because it's so dry, he was able to water from the top of the plant in the morning.
Okay.
And then he would water from the bottom in the afternoon to cool the canopy. And so, yeah, he was doing all kinds of really cool stuff. I need to get him on the show, but he's a big Grass Valley guy. Amazing. He was an amazing grower. I think he's doing other stuff right now, but like so many people in this industry, they've gone kind of into other occupations.
Some of these people, that definitely, scream, the benefits and stuff like that. Unfortunately, like some of them aren't here anymore.
Yeah. I mean, we've lost a bunch of friends.
Yeah.
Jay being one of them, but so many innovative people too. And then also other people just quitting because it got so hard.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't do cultivation. That's why cultivation is not my jam. I'd rather be into the picks and shovels and on the genetics, much prefer, because that's where my passion is anyway, is with, I feel like I like exploring. Feel like an explorer from, we're going into new territory that people haven't seen stuff. Seen these profiles before, and
right.
I'm constantly looking to be surprised, to surprise myself. Yeah, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. I share that thought with you on the breeding side of thing. Like, sometimes I think I'm like a serial entrepreneur. Like, I always want to my whole life.
You are a serial. I think you are a serial entrepreneur.
Like, my whole life is like, my whole professional life has always been like, startups in the tech industry and startups here. And, like, there's something about me that needs to trying to go forward and be ahead of it, and breeding kind of like clears satisfies that, because I'm always getting something new, trying to put something new out there.
Yeah, and it's the long play. It's the long game for sure. Yeah, breeding is not just the quick money, the quick this or the quick that. It takes a lot of time to do it successfully, to do it right.
I think that's one of the like picks and shovels that like I think now more than ever like genetics are worth more, right? Like not having the right genetic right now.
Some of them.
Of course.
Yeah.
But it proves the point, right? It's like if you have the wrong thing, even just green right now, and you're playing the wholesale game, it's going to be super hard to get rid of it. If you have a purple candy runts cross or something, and having the right thing and understanding that the market and what the market's asking for too, like it goes back to the procurement, and that's one of the things I do love about what I'm doing right now is being able to curate a menu of, a percentage of them have to be what the industry wants, but trying to find the best ones, the newest ones, the unique ones, and then having a portion of the menu of, people putting things into jars and, cultivators that don't have the time to breed or pheno hunt and, unique strains and unique terpenes or cannabinoid profiles. Like,
yeah,
it's cool to be part of it.
Yeah, it's a great time to be alive. So if people are interested in finding more out about you, where can they go?
I'm getting ready to launch my website, but Instagram, Kounter Kulture. I'm Kristian with a K. So it's Kounter Kulture, Counter_Culture_CA. Pretty active on it. Conception Nurseries is conceptionnurseries.com. Same thing with the Instagram as well, too. So
nice. Well, one last question. So if you had one piece of advice for your younger self that was just starting out in the industry, what would that be?
I feel like, people use a lot of the same, don't give up. And, I was actually having a conversation with a friend on the way here this morning. And I think it's tenacity. Like I was using the analogy of baseball. I love baseball. I grew up a big Yankee fan. My grandfather grew up in New York in the Bronx watching, the Yankees play. Some of my first memories are being, going to Yankee games and stuff like that. But I use the analogy of business, right? It goes back again to like, being an entrepreneur, like pivoting. And baseball, if you hit 3 out of 10, you're going to the Hall of Fame, right? And I think in this industry, especially right now, like we can get really down on ourselves because just the state of it's in, it's a fucking roller coaster.
For sure.
And from cultivation to money being, like still all the games that we have to play, right? The tenacity, and I'm still in it. Like a year ago, like I was questioning what I was doing, like, cause I had a good, path on the tech side, but it's really just tenacity. None of this was, there was no recipe. There was no book to follow. Like we've all made mistakes in the industry, and it was just like, just keep going. Like, don't let certain things pull you down. Like honestly, losing Jay was honestly, I didn't have the time to actually process it. Because like I was literally in the middle of building a massive grow. I literally left there, went to his funeral for 30 hours and had to come back and go right back to work, and it's just, I feel like I've been on this course of this industry for a reason, and it's almost like a blind faith kind of thing. So like, I think what I would tell myself is just keep pushing, like, again, like you said, can't really rely on what was in the past or what's in the future, but just being in the moment. I'd probably take that from you, enjoying the moment a little bit more, being more present, not trying to worry like, things covered or worrying about the mistakes we made in the past. It's like just enjoying right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're so blessed.
We are.
So thank you so much for coming on the show. I look forward to doing it again, and I'll see you up in Sacramento soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yep. Have a good one.
Good.